hate ice cream vans. Hello everyone, how are you doing? I hope you're having a wonderful day. For today's video I am continuing the theme of talking about psychosis, and I am going to talk about my hallucinations. However, when I was making the notes for this video I realised that it could potentially be very long, so in order to keep it a bit shorter and less boring for you guys, I decided to film it in two parts. So I'm going to film one video about all my bad, scary hallucinations, and then one about my good hallucinations. I've said it before, but I'm just going to say it again. Not everyone with psychosis has good hallucinations. They don't necessarily always have bad hallucinations, but I think for the most part the hallucinations are very unwelcome, whereas in my case I have good hallucinations as well that are actually quite comforting. But today I'm going to talk about the bad hallucinations. I just want to quickly apologise if you can hear lots of noise, by the way. I have shut the window but you can still sometimes hear the neighbours outside, and also my daughter is in the living room, which is right next door to this room, and she makes a lot of noise. There's not much I can do about that. In my What is Psychosis video I mentioned that there are two types of hallucinations, and I just want to quickly amend that. What I meant to say was that I've experienced two types of hallucinations, which are auditory and visual, but there is other types of hallucinations. There's tactile, where you feel things. There's instances where you can smell things. Basically hallucinations can involve any of the senses. I just personally only have experience with auditory and visual hallucinations. I also just want to quickly inform you that I gave some of my hallucinations names, and some of them had names that they came up with. There was 4 hallucinations that I saw or heard regularly, and 2 of them were bad, 2 of them were good, and one of them was a ghost who called herself Amanda. I wouldn't say that she was evil, but she was extremely twisted. If you haven't watched my last video where I talk about my delusions, then you might want to pause this one and go and check it out. I will have it linked in the description box below, just because my delusions do tie into my hallucinations and vice versa, so it might make more sense to you why I listened to my hallucinations and believed my hallucinations, etc., if you watch the delusions video first. But just to put it very simply for you, I thought that I could see ghosts and demons, and I thought that the reason that I could see them was because it was my job to get rid of the demons and to help the ghosts move on. So with Amanda, I believed that it was my job to help her, and I had no other option. This was something that I was destined to do. The problem was that with Amanda, she was one of those people that just didn't want help. She thrived off of drama. She was very over the top, very judgmental. I will describe all my hallucinations physically in another video, but basically Amanda was very short and very plump, and yet she was extremely judgmental when it came to what I ate. So if I went to the shop and bought myself a chocolate bar, she would judge me. If I put sugar in my coffee, she would judge me. Even if I was to have like 1 apple instead of 2 apples, she would be there judging me. And I think in a way she played a big part in my eating disorder, because for years I did have this voice that was just constantly there whenever I was eating. And even now when I'm on my medication and I don't physically hear her, I can still picture what she would say and how she would say it, and it still kind of stops me for a second. Thankfully I'm strong enough to push through that and ignore that completely and enjoy eating. Amanda was also extremely manipulative. She was very controlling and she knew how to get what she wanted, and a lot of the time what she wanted was for me to hurt myself in some way or another. She was the voice that was there when I stepped out in front of a car. She was the voice that was there when I self-harmed, etc. And one of her favourite ways to punish me whenever I tried to not do what she said was to be present all night long. So basically to talk to me, to sing ridiculously loudly, to just scream random stuff at me all night to the point that I was getting no sleep. And I don't know about other people with psychosis, but I imagine it's pretty common. The more exhausted you are, the worse the psychosis can get. So it was like this never-ending horrible cycle. I do still hear Amanda sometimes, mainly when I am extremely stressed and tired, or when something traumatic happens. I heard her quite a lot after my mum passed away, and I obviously wasn't sleeping very well at that time. Things were very, very stressful. I was very emotional, and thankfully, because I'm on the medication, I could still see it for what it was. I wasn't completely lost in the hallucination and delusions, and I wasn't believing in it all. I knew that it wasn't real. The hallucinations that I probably saw the most were the demons, and they were terrifying. They were kind of like a mix between Gollum from Lord of the Rings, a zombie, and then the rake. If you don't know what the rake is, it is a mythical creature. I shall put a picture up here somewhere. And yeah, they were really quite terrifying, and it wasn't just how they looked, but the way that they moved, the way that they spoke. A lot of the time they didn't speak. It was just like this high-pitched shrieking noise that they made, and they would move sort of like, you know, in horror films when somebody becomes possessed and their limbs are sort of everywhere and they're like crawling along the floor and stuff. Yeah, they move very much like that, very slowly but very, very creepy. And they also sounded a lot like what you hear in horror movies when they did speak. So when somebody's possessed in a horror movie and they start speaking and it's that very distorted voice, that's what they sounded like. And I saw the demons regularly for years. I would also have auditory hallucinations that were demons, and they had the very distorted voice and they were very degrading and cruel in a lot of ways. But the main auditory hallucination, the one that I had pretty much daily for years, was Amanda. And then the visual hallucination that I saw the most was also auditory, so it would speak at me. I say at me because it wasn't like we could have a conversation. It was mainly just them talking at me. And she was a she, and she was called Rebecca. And I actually named her that a few years after I started seeing her, because I watched the TV show The Vampire Diaries and she looked very like the character Rebecca from that. She was another one that belittled me, and she also had even more control over me than Amanda did, because Rebecca was a demon. She was basically... Sorry, Bella's screaming. My husband does with her, by the way. I'm not just letting her scream in another room. But yeah, she was like the head demon. She was in charge of all the creepy looking demons, and it was very easy for her to manipulate me because I was always scared that she would somehow set these demons on me or on somebody that I loved. And on top of that, she also had the ability to control minds. I'm aware that all this sounds very elaborate, by the way, but as I said in my delusions video, I have a very overactive imagination and a very creative mind. So when you add psychosis on top of that, you're going to wind up with something that's pretty bizarre. To this day, I can't tell you how that worked, because obviously it was my own mind pretending to have mind control over my own mind. But whenever I had the ability to resist her and to not do what she wanted me to do, then she could use this mind control. And there was one time where she had me try to stab myself and I managed to resist. I have no idea how, but I didn't do it. And then the very next day she used the mind control and I overdosed. There have been a few times where I have overdosed. There's a couple where I wound up in hospital. This was one of those times. I'm not going to talk about it in detail in this video, but basically I just had this overwhelming feeling that I had no other option. I had no choice but to do this. Like I said, I believed it was mind control. Obviously it wasn't, but it felt like she was inside my head making me do whatever she wanted me to do. Strangely, but thankfully, Rebecca hasn't really appeared to me since I've been on medication. It seems to keep her at bay somehow, and I am definitely not going to complain about that. My medication means that I don't really have hallucinations all that often anymore. I maybe have them like weekly at most, and if I do have them, I'm able to rationalise. I know they're not real, and sometimes they can get worse when I'm feeling very stressed or very tired or depressed. That seems to be very common for me, which I think is why I was misdiagnosed with psychotic depression before, because my hallucinations tended to happen when I was very depressed. But on the other hand, my delusions tend to be worse when I'm manic. I'm also still working with a psychiatrist, and I still talk about this stuff with my psychiatrist, and obviously the goal is that I don't have to deal with hallucinations at all, ever, but we will see where that goes. It might be that my medication changes in the future, but for right now I'm happy with the way that things are, in that I don't have the hallucinations even a fraction of the amount of time that I used to have them before, and I'm able to see them for what they are. I hope that this video explained things for you a bit, and thank you very much for watching it. I will try and do a video on my positive hallucinations sometime very soon. If you would like to learn more about psychosis and about bipolar disorder, then don't forget to like, subscribe and turn on the notifications so that you get told when I post a new video. And if there's anything in particular you would like me to cover, then feel free to leave it in the comments and I will do my best to do that. Again, thanks for watching, and I shall see you guys soon. Bye!